why do people quarantine? Maybe you're a new fish keeper, and that's what we kind of gear our channel towards, is the new fish keeper. And you don't even understand what this whole quarantine thing is, why anybody does it, what are we talking about here? This is isolating new fish that you get, whether they are fish that you bought from the pet store, or you ordered them online, or you got them from your friend down the street that's a member of your local club. You get these fish, and you have an already established long-term tank, and you have these precious fish in there that, aren't they precious? Here we go again. Absolutely amazing group of fish in this tank right now. There was only 6 fish in here when we started out, but if you have your tank at home that's well established and you have all of these fish that are very important to you, how crushed would you be if you brought in new fish from wherever and those fish were sick and introduced that illness, whatever it is that they have, introduced it into the tank and got all of your fish sick and kills or seriously hurts a lot, if not all of those fish, you would be devastated. So the idea behind quarantining is taking those fish that you got from wherever you got them from and isolating them into a tank on their own before introducing them into the tank with your prize fish. Because you're going to take that time when they're isolated. I'll put this on me since you're dancing with the cat. While you're figuring everything out with these fish and making sure that they're okay, some people medicate them. There's a lot of different things. I'm sorry, I'm distracted because of all this stuff going on with the cat. But it's taking the fish and putting them into their own tank and keeping them in there to monitor them for a length of time. We will talk about that length of time as we go on, but that is quarantining, to make sure that those fish are healthy and they're not sick and they are appropriate to put in with the fish that you already have. And we did not do that with these fish, and we just explained why that is. The relationship that we have with the company that we got these fish from. Now, having said that, to kind of go along with what you were talking about, you're on camera now, by the way.
Oh.
So, not that you were doing anything weird, or that you would, but even though we have been working with Live Fish Direct for years, there's been thousands and thousands of dollars that have gone back and forth between us, and we have all the faith in the world, there was still risk in putting these fish in there without quarantining them. There was risk to the 6 fish that we already had. That dragon blood is one of them. They're right there. And there's others. There's 5 others in there. It was a risk to those fish. But we had the confidence in who we were getting the fish from that we didn't need to do that. And there's another thing. There's another reason why we didn't do it. And that is, we didn't have anywhere to do it. I mean, they sent us 18 grown peacocks and haps. I'm not going to put them in a 13-gallon or 15-gallon fluval flex. It's just not reasonable to think that I could do that. We were not going to empty out Lisa's tank that has all of her tetras in it and put them in there. No, I mean, at the moment, right now, we do not have a quarantine-specific tank, but we are going to be setting one up, and that's going to get to the next thing. So, the next thing that I have on the list as far as quarantining goes is how. How do you quarantine? What do you need to set up as a quarantine tank? Because this, believe it or not, this is actually a common question that I get. How big does the tank need to be? What kind of filtration does it need to have? Does it need super lighting? Does it need plants? Okay, so here's the thing. A quarantine tank can be as fancy or as non-fancy as you want it to be.
Honestly, I think it should be completely empty.
There's no reason. There's no reason to have anything in there.
Yeah, I mean, just empty.
This is a holding tank is all it is. So you don't need to go out and spend a bunch of money and have it highly decorated. In fact, what a lot of people do, we're not going to do this because we have space for it, but what a lot of people do that are limited on space, they'll get a sponge filter and they'll put it in their display tank, their show tank, or if they have a sump, they'll put it down in their sump and they'll run it in the sump or in the tank so that that filter is always nice and juicy and seeded with good bacteria. And they'll just put the tank in the closet and have it dry. And then if they need it because they're going to quarantine a new fish, or maybe they want to use it as a hospital tank to treat a sick fish, they pull the tank out of the closet, fill it up, doesn't have to be tank water, put that sponge filter in there, and you have a tank that can get you by for a couple of weeks before the cycling
Some
process
people
might
even
happen.
use totes.
Yeah, absolutely, or buckets even.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Now, what I would like to do, I have not approved this through you, but what I think would be really cool is either right behind you or over on this side. I'm pointing to it on the picture now, but one of these cubbies underneath those two 125s, put a 29 gallon in there and put one of those Zis filters in it. And there it is. And
So
we
you
have
want to
one.
put sick fish underneath my tank?
I don't want to put sick fish under there. I want to have it there just in case, because we need to practice what we preach. So that is, that's what I would like to do. And if you say no, then I'll figure out another place to put it. But it would be a 29 gallon tank with maybe some substrate in it and literally nothing else. Now we might have a couple of caves or something like that, because there might be fish that, if they're not feeling well,
Stress.
they want to hide and they want to get somewhere where they feel safe. So that doesn't hurt either. But you don't have to
Keep
go
the lights
overboard.
off.
You don't have to go buy a Fluval 7 series filter to put on your hospital tank or your quarantine tank. You don't have to go crazy with it. It's a simple thing. You want a filter in it, you want moving water in it, and then that's really all that you need. And like I said, for me, we've got just the perfect space for a 29. And so that's what I am going to propose we put there. But even if it's something like a 10-gallon tank or even a 5-gallon tank, of course, it's all going to depend on what kind of fish you're keeping. If you're keeping tetras, then a 5 or a 10-gallon would probably be fine. For us, with these monsters that are in here, some of these, IFG's laughing. He's calling those monsters. But there's a couple of fish in here that are 9-10 inches long. These are big for African cichlids. What am I do with a 5-gallon tank with those fish? No way. So if I was getting one or two,
That's
sure.
where you put the bully at, a 5-gallon tank.
Yeah. And for the members who joined us on the members only live stream, I was talking about how much that dragon blood that's
Oh,
right
yeah.
there was a jerk. Look at him now.
I
He's
took
not-
care of his little butt, that's why.
He's not chasing anybody around
He
anymore.
got stuck in a net for like 24, almost 48 hours. Stuck his butt right in that net. He's
Tighten
been
him
good
right
ever
up.
since. Yeah.
But that's the beauty about having a tank like this, is that it can not only be used as a quarantine tank. I mean, you might be thinking, John, I've only got 2 or 3 tanks. What? I'm not buying fish all the time. Why do I need a quarantine tank? Well, you probably don't. But something like this could be used for a quarantine tank. It could also be used for a hospital tank if you do have a fish that comes down with something that's not contagious and you want to only treat that one particular fish, or if you have a surprise spawning in your tank and you want to keep those fry, now you've got somewhere to put it. So it's a good idea to have one of these around, because you just never know, and it's better to have it there and ready than to scramble and try to set something up on the fly and end up, it might be too
Sort
late.
of like I had to do when I bought an arowana.
Yep. We bought a hospital tank that night.
Yeah.
Excuse me. You bought a hospital tank
Sure
that
did.
night, which that fish ended up
My
being in
very
for like 6
first
months.
tank.
We've talked about why. We've talked about how. The other thing that I want to talk about is the whole med trio that Corey does. I have not myself personally done the med trio, which is the general cure. I think he uses some type of antibiotic like a erythromycin and an ick medication, like Super Ick Cure or ICX, whatever. He puts all 3 of those in for every fish that he quarantines. I'm not saying that's wrong. I think it's awesome. But we all don't have Corey's money. So that can be tricky for everybody to do it. But I personally believe that if you are putting a fish into a quarantine tank simply to monitor that fish so that you can then introduce it to your tank with all of your fish, you're not quarantining fish for the same reasons Corey is. Corey is quarantining, that's hard to say. Corey is quarantining because he is preparing those fish to put them in his shop to sell to customers. So he wants to make sure they are absolutely perfect.
Yep.
And so he goes through that expense of putting that med trio in there, which I think is brilliant. And I bet you he's one of maybe 5 fish stores in the world that's doing that. So you gotta love that. You know that if you buy a fish from that man, you're gonna get a clean fish. You just gotta go to Seattle to do it because he doesn't ship fish. But I don't know. I've never asked Corey. Maybe I should have before we did this stream. I know he was in here before. I don't think he's in here now. But I would love to know from Corey if he treats with the med trio for his personal fish. Like he bought a fish and he's going to take it home. Does he just put it in rotation with all the others and treat them all the same? Or would he go that far for a personal fish? I don't know. But for me, I'm not saying Corey's wrong.
I'm pretty
not at all.
sure
I think
he
he's-
didn't. I'm pretty sure he didn't go to somebody else's fish store and buy them. So he probably does still do it
And
if it came
that's a
through,
good thing.
because it would probably come right through his store. So
What that is, using that med trio, that is the absolute best case scenario. But we all can't afford that. I mean, medications are expensive. We've got friends like Chewy that live in Canada that can't even get some of these
Yeah.
medications. So
That's
for
true.
them, it's going to be difficult. Maybe some aquarium salt or something like that is about all you could do. Epsom salt, but you're not going to be able to do those heavy medications because y'all can't get them anymore, which I think is really dumb. But, you know, we've got plenty of dumb things this side of the border too. So I don't think you absolutely have to do that. What I think that does is makes the quarantine process a lot faster if you were to treat them with those medications. But if you're doing it for your personal aquarium and you're not in a hurry, I think you can put them in there and monitor them. And if something goes wrong, then you treat it, whether that be an ick medication or the erythromycin or whatever it is that you're going to use, you treat it as needed. That's what I would do. If I was quarantining fish to put in here, I would have that 29-gallon setup right there, and I would put the fish in there and I would just monitor them. And I would make sure everything's okay with them. And if they go a couple of weeks and everything's fine, then I would feel safe putting them in there. But if you want to be absolutely certain and you can afford it and you live south of the US-Canada border, you're not living in an area where you can't get these medications, then do it because it makes sense to use that med trio. The next thing that I have on the list is how long should we quarantine fish? And that's a really difficult one to answer. I just told you, maybe a couple of weeks if you're able to treat them with the medications, maybe a month if you don't have the medications and you're just monitoring them. A lot of it is going to depend on...
some people do it even longer than that.
I know.
I think Rachel does it for like 6 months.
Yeah, see, I mean, that's crazy. And there's...
No, that's smart.
Sure, I didn't mean it that way. I don't...
If you're putting them in your personal tank and you've got really special, fish, then of course, 6 months, that's good.
Imagine if you had, we're not going to name names, but imagine if you had 12 prize 7-inch discus and you brought those discus home, you know the ones, and you put them straight in there without quarantining them. I mean, yeah, something like that, quarantine them for 6 months. I don't think that's wrong. But we all know Rachel's crazy anyway, but that's what we love about her. But a lot of it is going to be dependent on your level of experience and your level of expertise. I don't like to say that. I shouldn't have even said that word because I don't think any of us are experts, but your knowledge of how a fish should behave. If you've been doing this for a while and you've kept dozens and dozens of different types of fish, you generally know how they're going to behave. You know peacocks and haps are going to be free swimmers, and they're going to kind of be all over the place, and you're not going to panic if every once in a while they dive into the substrate, because you know what they're doing. But if you get a hap, let's say you get a venustus, and you put it in the tank and it's down in the corner and it's just kind of sitting there and it's breathing heavy, you know that's not right. You know that's not, obviously the breathing heavy part is bad, but you also know, because that's not normal for a venustus to be sitting there like that in the corner. So your level of expertise as far as the experience that you have watching these fish and knowing their behaviors is going to help you to know how long to quarantine them. You put a discus in the tank, you know discus are never all over the place. They're just kind of chilling out, sitting around, chilling. Angels are the same way. They're not going to be running any races. They're just going to be hanging out. And so you're not going to panic if the fish is just kind of sitting there for a little bit. And you know that a discus is going to take a couple of days to warm up to its environment. It's not going to be happy the second you put it into a tank. So,
well, as far as discus go, I purchased my discus, and they're the only ones that go in the tank. I don't purchase more discus to put in the tank with the discus I already have. I don't mix my discus. So as far as quarantining them, they are going to be in the tank that they're going to be in forever.
yeah,
So-
but if you have,
Now, if I wanted to put, say, neon tetras in a tank with those discus, those things are going to get quarantined for a very, very, very long time, Rachel O'Leary long time, because my discus are that important to me. So,
but if you buy 12 discus and for whatever reason, a year later, 6 of them die, you're not going to just be down to 6 discus. You're going to want to add some more in there. And if you're going to add them, you're
If
going to
I-
buy them from the same guy that you
the
trust.
same person that I got them from. If 6 discus died
I'm
that
not
I
saying all at one
purchased,
time.
if I purchased 6 discus from Hans and they died, it's my fault. Because
Well, and I completely agree. I mean, with Hans, I have that same level of trust that we do with Life is Direct. And there's a few companies that we have that kind of trust with. There's a lot of great companies out there that are selling fish, and there's a lot of companies that are doing things right. So, but you know, these are just the companies that we deal with regularly. That's why we're talking about those. But yeah, I mean, the length of time is going to depend on how soon you see the fish is perfect. There's no heavy breathing. There's no hanging out and behaving abnormally. And even if you don't know what a fish, let's say you buy some kind of a tetra that you've never had before, and you're not really familiar with that fish's behavior and that fish's temperament, and you put them in the quarantine tank and you're like, I don't know if this fish is right or not. Just type in that fish on YouTube and watch a bunch of videos of it. See what everybody else's fish are looking like. Mm-hmm. And if your fish are behaving the same way as those, then you know they're probably going to be good. But don't just watch one. Watch multiple. Because you might watch the one of the guy that has a bunch of sick tetras. So there you go. But I don't think that there's any specific length of time that it has to be done. I think you put them in and you use common sense. And whether you choose to treat them or not, you monitor those fish. And when everything seems right, I keep pointing over there like the tank's already there.
I know, I'm looking at it.
It's beautiful, isn't it? When everything seems right, then you're safe. And you can put them into the tank with your prized 12 discus, the Santarums.